For the first time in 17 years, we have brand new Narnia book covers to discuss.
Yeah, like it's like if I go to, like when these come out, if I go to a bookstore, like these are most likely the ones I'm going to see, which is really cool.
Here we are again, Jim Fan, squinting at Narnia covers. Yes, this episode is a sort of, for those of you that don't know, this episode is a sort of sequel to a whole video series we did a few years ago called Marshwiggle Madness, where we put every Narnia book cover ever from around the world in front of Narnia Webbers around the world and had them vote. Then they narrowed it down to the top 32. We debated it from there, put them all against each other in a tournament-style face-off, culminating in a Final Four and the crowning of a champion. And for those of you that haven't seen that series, I won't give away which Narnia cover ended up being named the greatest Narnia cover of all time. But really, really fun series to do. And so fun, in fact, that 3 years later, we are back for more. We got some new Narnia covers, like I said, first time since 2007. And this time around, we're going to be comparing these 7 new Narnia covers to that previous set that was released 17 years ago and deciding which ones we like better. But first, quick side note, this image right here of these covers was what was posted on the official Narnia Instagram page, and it showed all 7 covers neatly arranged in publication order.
Such a tease.
Which caused some fans to get their hopes up that maybe the numbers on the spine would finally be changed back to publication order, or perhaps no numbers at all. But alas, was not to be. These are going to be numbered chronologically and releasing on April 15th. That said, Jim Van, who am I to argue with the official Narnia Instagram page?
I mean,
it
seemed pretty legit to me.
Yeah. So I don't think we have any choice. We've got to go through these in publication order. Twist my arm.
Have we ever said that?
Jim Finn, are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's go. All right. First up, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So again, we're comparing this new Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe cover to the last one that was released in 2007. What we're seeing in the 2007 cover is what looks like the scene where Aslan is walking to his death, and he's looking right at the camera, and Susan and Lucy are just buried into his mane. And then the more recent cover we have looks like it's the battle. We've got Aslan way off in the background, and then we've got the four Pevensies doing battle, I guess, with the White Witch.
Including Lucy.
Exactly, including Lucy and Susan. Susan's pointing an arrow right at the White Witch. It looks like the White Witch is holding the stone knife, if I'm not mistaken. We know the stone knife ended up. Boy, let the nitpicking begin. We know the stone knife ended up at Ramandu's Island eventually, but I guess she probably still has it. I guess that's fine. But it's basically the battle with the four Pevensies fighting the witch. Speaking of nitpicking, Lucy seems to have a sword instead of a dagger.
And
Just
a lot
saying.
of armor.
Yes. Looking at these two images, what are your initial thoughts, Jim Fan?
I mean, it's hard to look away from the most glaring thing to any true Narnia fan, which is why are all four of them being depicted in battle? And this is something you'll probably hear from me throughout this podcast, is like covers that are depicting scenes that don't actually exist in the book. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. We may see this more than once, but for now, just talking about this one, I mean, it's a nice action shot. It's just not real.
It's just not in this book. Now we can cut him some slack and say, look, it's more about creating the mood and the feel, and don't squint at it too much and say, well, is that actually what happened in the book? And I think I'm able to do both. I can approach it on both levels. So you're totally right, but I can let that go and just look at it as a cover.
Shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm capable of consciously putting that aside and just saying, what do we have here? What mood does this ultimately set? And to me, it just doesn't really feel like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to me. And probably of all the books in this set, this is the one that would just completely blend in with a pile of fantasy books. And that combined with, wait a minute, what's going on here? Yeah, sorry to start off on a negative note, but don't have a positive feeling about this new Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe cover. I do like the White Witch's dress kind of turning into a waterfall or whatever. That's kind of a neat thing.
It's very well done, like artistically. Like I think it's composed well. I think they have like an interesting concept of like if I look at each piece individually, I'm like, okay, that is a really interesting concept. Just kind of together. You're right. It doesn't really evoke the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It just is kind of like the Witch with a little bit of the Lion in the back, and there's no wardrobe.
There's no wardrobe, which I'm sure to you disqualifies this from being a great Narnia cover, right? Because this is a major sticking point with our Marshwiggle Madness series. Is you were like, well, the title, what's in the title has to be visually represented on the cover somehow. So sorry, it's only got a lion and a witch. In fact, the 2007 one only has the lion, doesn't have a witch or a wardrobe. So there you go, Jen fan, right?
But don't we
doesn't count, fail.
Don't we love that cover of it's just Tumnus? Like, I correct me if I'm wrong, but that's
even though there's no lion, witch, or wardrobe.
I know.
What?
I was like, you're saying I think that this is my this is the hill I die on. I was like, I don't think this is the hill I die on all the time. Just sometimes.
Okay, fair. You die on that hill occasionally.
Only sometimes.
Die on the hill of the
when I decide I just
sometimes.
want to.
Okay, just occasionally. So it sounds like we're both going for the previous set on this one, right?
I think so. Why does Lucy have a sword? That doesn't make any sense. All right, so next, going in publication order, we have Prince Caspian. And so the new cover, we're looking at a scene that I was looking at this earlier and I was trying to place, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is meant to be the duel between Miraz and Peter. You think?
Well,
it's not?
If we want to really squint and nitpick, it looks like the battle is going on behind them.
Which I can see.
So in the book, Miraz is already dead in the book when the battle starts. So maybe
so it's like it's a fake scene, but in terms of the two of them,
is this Peter fighting Sepespian? Is this the moment that Peter is he getting ready to behead Sepespian here, which he does just after the battle starts? So if you want to really dive into it here, a nitpick,
which
you could
would be even more random.
You could say this is actually Peter fighting Sepespian and not Miraz, or maybe it's not a battle going on in the background. Maybe it's just like crowd control. Maybe they're like, "Hang on, guys, they're fighting, back away."
Yes, there's definitely a very large battle going on in the background. So
for the record, I think I think I'm being ridiculous. I'm sure it's just
You're
Peter
like,
and Miraz.
It's supposed to be Miraz.
It's about the mood of the thing. We're still gonna do it, but it's about the mood of the thing anyway.
Well, the shame is that if you look at the back cover, that adds so much more, like, to me, Prince Caspian, like, atmosphere, because you can see the trees in the background. And
well, I'm really focused on if you look at the back cover of Prince Caspian, I'm pretty focused on the foreground of superhero Reepicheep sticking the landing.
Yes. That feels a little more Prince Caspian to me. But yes, I like
the trees back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, it's a battle scene. It's kind of dark and moody, and in the front you have what I can only assume to be Peter and Miraz, because that just makes sense to me. Which again, it's not that we've established that this is not a real scene in terms of there wasn't a battle happening during the duel, unless you go with Glumpuddle's theory, which is, okay, this is Peter and Sepespian. Sure.
If you must reconcile it, it's Peter and Sepespian.
Either way, neither of them are Caspian.
Right.
Which, if it's called Prince Caspian, I do appreciate when the covers put him on it. I think it makes sense. Because if I was looking at this, I would be like, oh, it's Caspian fighting. I can't wait to see this story about Caspian being such a boss fighter.
I think it's cool that you find out when you read it that, oh, I just assumed that was Caspian. It's not. I think that's cool. But whatever.
Yeah. It's like, spoiler alert.
Not the first time the single combat has been depicted. But compared to the 2007 version, which is as simple as it gets, it's just a close-up of two hands holding up the hilt of a sword, and that's it. Which, look, I understand people are going to say it's boring or whatever. I appreciate them wanting to go for something super, super simple. And maybe thinking about this as it's just one cover in a series rather than a standalone thing. I can respect that. But so I don't love it, but I can kind of respect the choice to go for something simple. You might think I wouldn't like this new Prince Caspian cover because of, the seeming like it might not be book accurate for one thing, and also mentioning it with wardrobe, how I mentioned that just felt so generic fantasy. And this one, it's like, man, how much more generic fantasy can you get than two guys with swords? But I like it.
I don't hate it.
There's something about the mood that, the mood just sort of feels pretty Prince Caspian-y to me. And I like the kind of awkward poses their swords are in. It feels more realistic. Yeah, Miraz or Sepespian, whoever it is in particular, it just seems like a very, like this was a still taken from a real sword fight.
Yeah.
I
There's
like
a
the
lot
black
of
and the white.
movement.
I think like the black and the white for their costumes, I think is a great choice. Peter seems to have a kind of helmet / crown combo, which is an interesting choice. I like the heavy backlight on them. Somehow this just sort of sets the mood and the tone and the feel feels right for Prince Caspian, and it's pretty attention getting. So I'm gonna give a win to the new set here. I'm gonna say that the new cover is better than the 2007 version.
I think in terms of like if I'm choosing like which cover, like, you know, nitpicking aside, like which one do I like enjoy looking at more? Like I like looking at the new one better.
Before we move on, quick shout out to everyone in our Narnia Web chat group on Discord. As always, that was the very first place we shared the news of these new covers, and immediately people started zooming in, nerding out about every detail. And I have to acknowledge Narnia Webber Alec Rinden in particular, who, as far as I'm aware, was the first person to spot a really interesting Easter egg about these covers. And they are still discussing those covers in the chat group. And if you want to join the Discord group, check the link for the description, and you'll also get access to additional podcast episodes, as well as early movie news tips and rumors that the news team is investigating. Thank you very much, Patreon supporters, for supporting Narnia Web and this podcast. All right, on to Voyage of the Dawn Treader. In the 2007 version, we had a very simple Reepicheep and Dragon Eustace. Very sad Dragon Eustace, kind of looking
Very
right towards
sad.
the camera. Yes. And then the new cover is much more action-packed. It's the Sea Serpent battle. We've got Eustace, we've got Lucy and Edmund and Reepicheep in the foreground. Reepicheep is actually swinging in, woo, with sword in the air. So very,
start hauling at it.
Yeah, very, very different covers. So if we want to talk about book accuracy a little bit, the major memorable moment from this scene is Reepicheep saying, "Don't fight, push." Is that the vibe you get from Reepicheep right here?
No, he looks like he's about to just go straight for the head.
Yeah, which appreciate that. But look, that's a little thing, and maybe it's like, oh, maybe he's jumping around screaming, "Don't fight, push," and was waving his sword in the air to get their attention. I can let that one go. That's fine. On the plus side, as far as book details, Lucy's holding an axe right there, because in the book she ran to get an axe that ended up not being needed. So, okay, that's a neat little detail in there. And then the previous cover, look, intellectually, I do appreciate the decision to show, to wanna, first off, not just show the Dawn Treader. Sorry, Jim, I don't know if you're going to die on that hill right now, but we went back and forth on that one a lot. And I appreciate the choice to show, to want to represent this moment. To me, that's one of the great visuals in all the 7 books is this big, scary dragon being comforted by this little mouse. I don't love the execution, though. They look a little bit like they're posing for a Christmas card.
Right.
Merry Christmas from Reepicheep and Dragon Eustace. But there's a very cartoony kind of feel to it. So intellectually, I appreciate a lot of things, but the execution doesn't quite do it for me. So I'm kind of leaning towards the new cover right now. What are your thoughts on these covers?
I think if I'm picking one of these two, I will probably pick the new one. However, I don't love either of them.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think the new one, you know, it has a lot of movement. It's, you know, depicting a scene from the book. I was looking at it and I was like, of course they pick, you know, the one action sequence and they put that on the cover. Like, you know me, I just love a simple, just show me the Dawn Treader. Like, that to me is telling me more about, like, this story is like an adventure story of, like, they're going from place to place and they're on a, you know, they're on the mission versus, like, this makes me feel like, oh, they're going to be, like, just fighting monsters and that's like the theme of the book, and it's really not. But that's just like my own like personal little pet peeve.
Now the Dawn Treader is cover. Here. You see in the foreground right there. That's the side of the Dawn Treader.
Sideways,
so
tipping over.
Check that box. There we go. I guess the Dawn Treader is in this book after all. But
we'll have to give it to it.
I assume that's Eustace with Caspian's getting ready to break Caspian's second best sword right there. I assume is what's about to
It
go on
must
there.
be.
If you look on the back, there's the back of the book. There's what looks like the green mist, little tiny green thing happening there. It's not
Again,
actually, but it's just paranoia.
you know, what can I say? This is
yeah,
the thing people love to harp on.
yeah. This is the one that I think this is the cover that took me the longest to make up my mind about. I had to really live with this one for a couple hours before deciding if I loved it or hated it. And I think this is probably my favorite of the new covers ultimately. I find that I do completely hear what you're saying. This doesn't really give you a sense of the mood of the book at all. And this is my favorite book ever, by the way.
Same.
Not just Narnia. This is my favorite book, period. So no, this does not say Voyage of the Dawn Treader to me, but it does get my attention. I think it's very striking. There's kind of a lot of things going on in it. As I let my eyes wander, I start to notice little things. I appreciate how front and center Reepicheep is, even though I'm not sure if it's quite in tune with Don't Fight Push. I find this very attention getting and very striking, and it's something I like to keep on looking at. So I really want to give a win to the previous set here. I want to, because I so respect the decision to want to represent this moment, but I just don't think the execution works for me. Their poses and the cartooniness of it.
Yeah, the art style doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
That also doesn't evoke. While I see the scene that they're setting, it doesn't evoke.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me want to pick it up and read it.
Yeah. So we're both giving the win to the new set on this one.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. All right. So next we have the Silver Chair. And this one, I feel like Silver Chair covers can be super hit or miss. So,
okay.
So for the new cover, it's the classic depiction of Rillian. He's with the sword and he's about to chop the head off the serpent.
This is two different versions of exactly the same moment.
Yes.
In fact, Rillian's in almost exactly the same pose in both of them.
It's very similar, very, very similar. Although, whereas the old version, again, it's a very specific, not cartoony art style, but
it does seem a little cartoony to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how you would describe that particular art style, but it's more illustrated. It's more simple. It's just like a plain mist background. There's nothing else. It's just the two of them. Whereas in the new cover, you can see the silver chair in the background. You can see
technically yes. Now I
a little bit.
It took me I don't think it was till the second or third time I looked at it that I realized that was the silver chair. It just kind of looked like kind of generic castle ruins or something.
Right.
And it took me a while to go, oh, that must be the silver chair. I mean, it looks massive for one thing. So does that satisfy? And it was the silver chair in particular that we really, went back and forth on. I'm like, they shouldn't be showing the silver chair, even though it's called the silver chair. But does this satisfy you, Jim Fan? Is the silver chair, does this count as the silver chair being on the cover? Because you don't know it's the silver chair.
I think it's one of those things where
maybe that's good because of spoilers.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I think you assume that if the book is called The Silver Chair, you will at some point see a silver chair.
Agreed.
So the fact that you see it doesn't necessarily bother me. But it's one of those things where a lot of times with covers, you look at it and you want it to be like evocative enough to like want you to pick up the book and to read it, but it's one of those things where after you read the book, you'll go back and be like, oh, now I understand where this image came from. And I find this a lot especially when I'm reading more like young adult fantasy, that the covers when I first pick it up tend to be, it's just like a jumble of colors and images. And I'm not really picking anything out until after I read it and I go back and I'm like, oh, that is the scene that they're depicting, or that's the multiple scenes that they're kind of montaging together. For this one, the new one feels a little busier to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess
for all of these, the new covers are busier.
Yeah, it feels a little more chaotic. A little. You can see also one thing we didn't mention is that. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Eustace and Jill are in this as well. So which is You can see them, just the backs of them, no faces. But
I don't mind how they look, actually. I like how they look.
Yeah.
They look. Jill in particular looks a little old, maybe, on the older side than what I would imagine. But yeah, I kind of like their costumes.
Yeah. So I think in terms of like this, it's depicting a scene from the book. There's a lot of there's a lot of motion. There's a lot of chaos. I think, if I'm going to be honest, like, I think the simplicity of the older cover, it's like, I prefer looking at that. Like, just like as a cover, but I do appreciate that they hit on so many points in the new cover where it's like, you have the chair, you have the serpent, you can also see your other two characters.
Yeah.
Just can't see Puddleglum, which
He's on the back.
he's on the back.
Yep.
But you got to turn the book around.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I think I am going to go with the new cover, though, on this one. It's just that old one, I like the simplicity, just a touch too simple in terms of I wish it wasn't so kind of comic book feeling. The new one, I find it looks mythic. I like the light. It seems like the snakes, whatever those flappy things are slightly translucent. That seems really neat. So it's very dramatic, and I think the new one for me, I've gone back and forth on this one. This probably the decision I've gone back and forth on the most. I think the new cover draws me in a little bit more, but it is really interesting seeing, like, literally the exact same moment. We'll see that in the next set, actually, for the horse and his boy. Exact same thing. Exactly the same moment, but two different styles of it. In the Discord group, Absolute Power absolutely said, I wonder if with modern, as in the last few decades, covers, there's a certain brief from the Lewis estate about what has to appear on the covers. Because
maybe
we've seen so many things. Like, there's always Fledge on Magician's Nephew. Jewel's always on Last Battle. And we seem to always have this moment for the silver chair. And you could say, well, they have to show the silver chair because it's called the silver chair, but the previous one doesn't show the silver chair. It just shows that moment. I mean, you can't justify the big spoiler that way because they have to show the title, but you're not showing it. So,
yeah.
And I would say the same thing about the new one, actually. It's there, but you don't know what it is. So anyway, so tough decision for me. I'm ultimately going to side with the new silver chair cover.
I think.
What are you going to do, Jim Fan? What'll it be?
I honestly think I'm going to go for the older one.
Okay.
I don't know. I just enjoy looking at it more.
Our first split decision.
But I do like the new one. I think it is a good cover. I think it's a little busy for me, but they get a lot in there. So it's very satisfying in that sense. Right. So I like them both. I really do.
The Horse and His Boy, and like I said, once again, we have two very different renditions of, I think, exactly the same moment. I mean, maybe we've got Shasta, the moment, they're very, very close to the moment that Shasta and Erebus meet up, racing side by side. In both images, in both the 2007 and the new cover, they're both running left to right. And we see Shasta in the foreground and Erebus in the background. Of course, in the previous set, Erebus is way back there.
Way back
so
there.
Really, the new cover takes place a few seconds after the old one, basically. And, of course, we have Aslan in the new cover, not behind them, but above them. That's a very non-literal element, I think. I like the idea of Aslan as kind of driving on the horses, which is exactly, especially after you read the book, that's exactly what happened. So I think that works really well. What's your general thought on these images, Jim Fan? What speaks to you more?
I think I really like the new one, and I this actually might be my favorite of all the new ones. With another one.
This is the one when I did the poll in the Narnia Web Discord group. This 2/3 voted for The Horse and His Boy as their favorite of the new cover. So you're not alone.
I think it's not too busy. I think it has the right amount of action, and whether or not this is book accurate, I love the depiction of Aslan. Like, I never would have thought that to do it that way, but
I think I'd say it is book accurate in the non-literal sense that it's
in the
showing
non-literal
Aslan
sense, yeah,
and a spirit ke's driving them on, you know,
because it's physically,
because it's kind of a ghosty Aslan,
yeah. But you see like a lot of like there's a lot of like the you see like that the fierce side of him, like the
Yes.
like the pushing and the like I am the one who
scary.
is like yeah. But yeah, but there's a lot of action. It's not too spoilery. You see the horse and his boy, so check mark
there you
there.
go. Check. And
I just think it's really well done. And the other cover is showing, like you said, it's a similar scene, but it's not as evocative to me. Like if I really look at it, I can be like, okay, they're like racing, but I don't, I don't know. It doesn't draw me in quite as much.
Comic booky and cartoony, you think, and doesn't get you
a little bit.
Yeah. In the Discord group, Starcat said talking about the new cover, the detail in the Tarkina's armor versus Shasta's outfit and the horse's tack introduces the culture in a way that hasn't been done before, which I think is a really good point.
Very good observation.
I agree with everything you just said about this cover. But remember, this is so funny this is happening. For Marshwiggle Madness, there was one Horse and His Boy cover.
That's too long ago. I don't remember a thing.
Okay, there was I edited them, so I have a clear memory. There was
go.
one Horse and His Boy cover that we both went, oh, we're going to vote for that one. But as we looked at it, we noticed, wait a minute, that is a really great cover for a different story.
It looks like
it's
he's
the
totally,
boy and his horse,
that's
not the
what
horse
it looks
and
like.
his boy.
That's what it looks like.
You're
So
talking me out of it.
I'm torn.
You're
really.
talking me out of it. I was like going for this one, but now you're like, you're right. This is the boy and his
This
horse,
isn't
not the horse and his boy.
it's a
And so we went, we can't vote for this. It's a good cover, but it's not the Horse and His Boy. We got to go with something else. And that is kind of where I'm at right now, because I agree with everything you just said about the cover, and it's very striking, and I love Starcat's point. I love Aslan in the background, but I can't look past the fact that Shasta's holding Bree's reins.
that is a pretty big
It's
mess.
one of those things where I was liking this quite a bit. And then now I can't, but it was...
Maybe like his hand is just there, but it's not really like holding them. They're just like just keeping them from like falling in the dust. We can rationalize this.
Eustace Peccator in the Discord group pointed that one out, and I went, you could rationalize it all you want. I can't look past it now. And that makes me look at the previous set, and I appreciate that Shasta, as he should... looks like he's holding on for dear life, right?
Yes.
And and I would even say that Bree, as much as you can pull off in a still image, looks like a pretty intelligent being. It doesn't just look like a normal horse. So that really makes me appreciate that older cover more. So maybe this is too nerdy. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky. But I've got to go with the older set on this one.
If I cannot go for the newer one. No, did I say I like the new Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? I don't know. But if I can nitpick...
You like the old one. You like the old one, you said.
If I can nitpick that Lucy has a sword,
you
can nitpick that he's holding the reins. We just...
Yep. But it's funny, like the other 99.9% I think is great. I agree with everything you just said, everything they were saying on Discord about it. But that one detail's like, and like I said, made me appreciate the older cover. So and I like how simple. I wish it wasn't so simple that it felt cartoony, but I like the bold choice to keep this one really, really simple. I like the kind of long lens feel of the old one. So I'm gonna go with the previous set for the Horse and His Boy.
I'm gonna go with the new one. Sorry.
Right? Another split decision.
Okay, next one we are going to is The Magician's Nephew. There's a lot to say about both of these. Mm-hmm. So the new one, it's kind of hard to describe. You have Fledge with the kids on the back, and it looks like they're flying away from like a Doctor Strange portal behind them, which I think is the green ring, and you can kind of see the yellow ring as well. And there's like bubbles or something. It's kind of hard to tell. And then you see Jadis, and she's holding.
This is the scene where she tempts Diggory with the.
My thing is too small. I need to pull this up. She's holding the apple.
Yes. So this is the scene where she tempts Diggory with the apple, and he says no, and they fly away. And you could say that this scene comes after the moment in the previous cover.
Yes.
Where Diggory picks the apple in the previous cover, and here he is saying no to the apple and running away.
Yes. And the old cover is it's a large image of the silver apple, you can kind of see his reflection in it a little bit. Diggory's holding it, and you peek through the leaves, and you just see like creepy white face peeking out in the back. So very green. Everything is very.
I love seeing Diggory's reflection in the silver apple. It's super cool.
Yes. Everything is very green.
Yes.
Silver Magician's Nephew is the green book, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Again, older set. Not to beat a dead horse here, but comic booky, little too cartoony for me. But I love this bold choice of the close up on the silver apple. Maybe it's spoilery, showing the white witch because you can see that she's white in the background there. That might be an unfortunate spoiler, but I love the decision to show the silver apple. That just resonates more and captures the mood of the story a lot better for me, I think.
Yeah.
And then the new one, there's just look. So first off, Fledge again. We went through a lot of Magician's Nephew covers, and it felt like most of them had Fledge on the cover. And it just seems like, horses with wings. This'll sell. This is fantasy. We got to do this.
Yeah, it's fantasy. We got to show the most fantastical aspect
I'm not just picking on the latest cover. I'm saying in general, Fledge has been on the cover of Magician's Nephew a lot, and it's kind of unfair. It's like, look. I think Narnia Webbers are not the target audience. The main target audience for these covers probably the two of us least of all,
right?
Who were completely immersed in every Narnia cover ever made. It's completely unfair, but it's a little sticking point with me that Fledge again, and I think this might be my least favorite of the 7. The rings. I know it's not literal. I know they're not literally flying through giant rings. But it still kind of feels like it to me. I just can't quite. Yeah. It just seems
especially
odd.
because the characters like Diggory and Polly are posed to where it feels very much like they're interacting with exactly what we're seeing behind them, which is so not the case. It's one of those things where it's like I see what they're trying to do like artistically, because if you kind of dive into it, you see a lot of elements that all come together in the book, but just not in this literal way. It's like, the bubbles of the pond and the rings and the apple and all of that, it's kind of all separate elements that are coming together to make one cover. So like I get what they're going for, but it's again, this is not a scene from the book. This doesn't happen.
They do fly away from Jadis. They do say no. I guess technically we should see Diggory he should have an apple of his own tucked under his arm or something. Yes. Maybe it's the other hand that has it, So well, again, it's the
same thing. In line with wardrobe, at no point are all 4 Pevensies pulling out their weapons.
No, but this
fight
one,
the White Witch.
I think this is like she tempts Diggory, keep the apple for yourself. He says no, and they fly away. And this is her shouting, think of me when you lie old and dying on your deathbed and all that. You could say this is that moment. It's kind of weird that they're flying down instead of up, but that's an artistic decision.
Artistic.
To me, it's the busyness of it, and the weirdness of the rings. But most of all, just Fledge again. I think that kind of turns me off to it. This is an easy decision. I'm going to go with the previous set from 2007. I really appreciate the bold choice. Again, wish it wasn't so comic booky, but I really appreciate the bold choice of having big close up of the silver apple.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the old one.
Okay, so both going with the 2007 set on this one. And last but not least, or is it? Might be, is The Last Battle. And in 2007, we have a unicorn. And then
as per usual.
Yes, we saw a lot of Last Battle covers on Marshwiggle Madness, and it felt like a lot of them had Jewel on the cover. That might be my cynicism talking again of it just feels like, let's put a unicorn on there. It'll
look cool, and it is definitely the most representative of the entire book.
Sure.
Not.
And the new cover does have Jewel on it. The new cover is the main focus of it is this Aslan thing in a vision of Aslan in the sky, and the stars are raining down, and Aslan doesn't seem too happy about it. Then in the foreground it could be anyone. Let's just assume it's Tyrion on the left there, and then Jewel on the right. So Jewel is technically there, but it at least isn't front and center. No. And then in the middle, it could be Lucy, it could be Jill. Hard to say.
I think when I saw it, I assumed it was Lucy.
I think my brain went to Lucy as well.
Just
I
the way
guess that's what you would think.
if this is meant to be, again, it's not one of those things where it's meant to. I don't think it's meant to be literal, because I don't think
No.
Aslan would be in the sky like that with the falling stars. But
Yeah.
just it looks like she is being drawn towards Aslan, even in this meta.
I see
whatever.
Aslan as being not connected to the characters in the foreground here. Is kind of how I read it. So I'm not really sure. Let me zoom in here. I'm not really sure. We'll just go with Lucy. I'm not really sure what Lucy's doing there. Maria in the Discord group said it looks like Aslan is suffering, and that really annoyed me at first. But then I thought about how much of the book is Aslan's memory being completely tarnished and misrepresented. So maybe it's actually on purpose. Aslan looking like he's not super happy. This is one where I don't like. As I look around and look at every individual detail, I find things I don't love. But the overall impact is there for me. It's certainly very attention getting, and I think it does kind of capture the mood of the story, more or less. So I'm definitely giving a win to the new set, just because the old set. Oh, they just put a unicorn on there. There's
not
no
a lot
recovering from that.
Yeah. I think the one thing I really appreciated about the new cover is I love the depiction of the falling stars.
That's
and
cool.
I'm trying to remember, have we ever seen that before?
We have. There was the
on a cover.
Yes, there's one where like inside they're in like the real Narnia, and they're looking out into the Narnia that's being destroyed, and you kind of see the stars coming down.
Yeah.
And we've seen have we seen that on the Photoshoppy set where it's Jewel kind of, rearing or whatever? I think the stars are on there. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know I appreciated like them being in the foreground. To me, like that's a very like evocative moment from the book, and
absolutely.
It
Spoiler.
lends to the
world ends. Spoiler.
Sorry if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. I think I would hope that you.
Well, I'm just talking about as a cover. They're showing a spoiler moment. That was a major theme of our Marshpiggle Madness discussions. Was how how much are you allowed to spoil in a cover? But you don't know what's going on, so it's fine.
Yeah, there's no contextualization to it. So
yeah, I agree. It's fine.
Until you get to it, it's not going to spoil it. It's not going to ruin it for you.
I'm definitely going with a new cover on this one. Which way
I
are you
agree.
going?
I think it evokes a lot of emotion. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting composition that we haven't really seen before. I like Aslan. I think it's an interesting way to portray him that is not inaccurate. So
yeah. All right, we'll go with the new set on this one.
Cool.
All right, so that is all 7. Among Narnia Webbers, the general reaction to this new cover art seems to be fairly mixed, but definitely leaning positive from what I've seen. And I have to, again, the shout out I mentioned earlier, Narnia Webber Alec Rendon in the Narnia Web Discord group was, as far as I'm aware, the first person to notice the planetary symbols on each of these covers. So great spotting there, Alec Rendon. And so obviously the artist of these, Owen Richardson, is a fan of Dr. Ward's book Planet Narnia. So there you go. Is that good or is that bad? Leave that to the viewers and listeners to decide. I guess since they're subtle, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, to me it didn't really make a strong impression, although I definitely thought it was I'm sure it was something that was vetted. I think. I'm
wonder.
Sure
I mean, I don't know. Do you think that
you could really sneak that in there though?
Do you think you'd
with
say,
nobody knowing?
Do you think they're squinting that hard, going, "Oh, that looks like the symbol for Jupiter"? I mean, I think I could see a harp. I can see it.
But
getting
that's the
past,
most obvious one. It kind of not stands out, but it is the most obvious. I think if you were like looking at it, I don't know.
Look back through these really quick. I mean, Dawn Treader is the most obvious with the sun right in the center there. But you're not going to go, wait a minute, the sun, is that like Dr. Ward's book where Dawn Treader is, it's the sun imagery? No. And yeah, they may have been vetted, or they may have. In either way, HarperCollins wouldn't necessarily object to. Wait a minute, we can't be referencing Dr. Ward's book. I don't think they would necessarily object to it. I know they didn't publish Planet Narnia, but So, Jim Fan, just overall thoughts. We've taken a good deep dive into these 7 covers. What's your overall impression of these new Narnia covers generally?
I think generally, I think they're fairly non-offensive. Sorry, that's not like the highest praise I can give. I think they're good. Like, I think if you put them together as a set, and they're being sold as a box set, like, I think they'll look nice on a shelf. I think there's not anything in there that would be extremely polarizing to either a hardcore fan or someone who's just a casual fan, and they're like, oh, that looks, because sometimes when we have like these, not these like these deep takes, like the old Dawn Treader where it's Eustace and Reepicheep, like, someone who's not familiar with the book could look at that and be like, that doesn't tell me, like, we know what that is, but would they know, and like, would that like help them want to pick up the book? I don't know. So sometimes, like, these deep takes, like, that the fans really love, are not always the most accessible to the general public.
Sure, obviously we're not the primary target audience.
No, we are not.
But what else can I do but look at this and react to it?
We do love some good art, and I think any day that we get to look at just a new an artist, a new take on material that we love, I think, having something new to talk about and be like, oh, I never thought of like depicting it that way, and that's an interesting choice to do it that way. Like, I think that's always great. So I think overall I do like them.
Okay. My general feeling, and again, have to say it again, that Narnia Webbers aren't the main target audience of these, and the two of us least of all. Completely immersed ourselves in every Narnia cover ever, for a few months. And
the good, the bad, and the really bad.
Exactly. We actually did, for Patreon supporters only, we did ones for about, we looked at the 5 covers that were voted the worst, according to Narnia Webbers. So it's hard for me not to feel, though, a little just disappointed that there's not a lot new here. In fact, they feel quite similar to the so-called Photoshoppy set we got from in the early 90s. Let me pull one out here. This set right here is what I'm talking about. Even the colors, if you look at each one, like artist kind of went with the same kind of colors-ish for the most part. Lines up with that set. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But just me as someone who's really deep dived into every Narnia cover ever. It's like, oh, okay, I was just hoping for something new. I was just hoping for something that I guess I was wanting something new, I guess. And this seems a little bit like more of the same. Doesn't mean it's bad, but that's just my honest, as someone that's immersed in so many Narnia covers, it's my honest feeling. And they went to, and it's did the whole thing. You have the Rillian and the snake on the silver chair. You have Fledge on Magician's Nephew. There were some things that we brought back. So I think if we could take the kind of texture from these new covers and put it on the previous set, like take those scenes on the previous set, but just kind of take away some of that comic bookiness and add the texture from the new set, I think we'd have that might be the perfect Narnia covers right there. So yeah, what do I think about these? I think they're fine, I guess, is my overall reaction. I'll probably buy 1 or 2 of them, when they come out, just to the completionist in me has to, I mean, I've got
I was going to say, you have a lot.
I've got a lot of Narnia covers.
And he has them always within arm's reach.
Yes, no. It just for this podcast I had a whole bunch. This is the German version.
That's very nice.
That I was so again I was so it's I'm a tough crowd is what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna be really picky.
Just wait, we're gonna get the movie tie-in version soon.
Here's
with
a version
the big
with
red
Aslan
Netflix on it.
Aslan with a beard here.
As seen on Netflix.
That's true. We will get movie tie-in versions probably this time next year.
Most likely.
Yes, and honestly, we'll probably get more non-movie tie-ins in the next few years. If history's any guide, in the 2000s we got that I think that Photoshoppy set came out before the movie, like a few years before the movie. Then you had well, hang on, let me just show you. Yeah, this was a couple years before the movie came out. And then we had this set came out like the same year as the movie. And then we had these new ones which came out a couple of years after the movie. So if that's any guide, we might be back here in just a few years, Jim Fan, doing this again. So that's the good news.
The good news is that, how many covers did we put into Marshwiggle Madness and how many years ago that was?
We started out with over 200.
I know. I don't think we're going to get quite 200 new covers, but I do think, give it some time. We'll be able to do a round 2 with some fairly new material.
Talking Beasts of the Narnia podcast is made possible by fans like you. If you want to support Narnia Web and this podcast, please join our Patreon community. You'll get early movie news, tips, and rumors. The news team is investigating additional podcast episodes and access to our Discord chat group. To sign up, visit patreon.com/NarniaWeb. Thank you very much for supporting this community further up and further in.